think we're hooked up on YouTube.
All right. Well, welcome once again, whether this is morning, noon, or night. I'm Marin, and Margot and I run Indie Birth. If you don't know us, I know a lot of people here are new. So we have a midwifery school and a doula program and all kinds of fun stuff. But these moon circles happen twice a month. So on the full moon and the new moon, every month. They're obviously free and open to everybody. So just, be on our email list, be looking at Instagram. Every moon circle is a different topic. So today we are talking about equipment and the birth bag, the exciting world of the birth bag of the midwife.
Everyone wants to know what's in it.
Yeah, what's in it? And I don't know what else people want to know really, but we'll talk about all of those things. So if you're new, welcome. If you're not new, also welcome. It is the new moon in Aries. So start to Aries season, I think, is really exciting. Lots of things are coming to an end for many of us. That's the theme of completion right now. And Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. So it's as if we're at the new year for people that honor the cycles of the year. So that's an update with help from my friend Phoebe, who's very well versed in all that, an energetic update via her to you through me. So I'm super excited about, the things that feel like they're ending for me and all the new beginnings. And I would imagine the same is the feeling for many of you here. So instead of pulling a card, that's my astrological summary today for the new moon.
Yeah, definitely feeling it over here.
I bet.
I have completed my divorce papers as of today, which was not intentional that I was going to do it on the new moon, but feels very apropos.
And it's the spring equinox. So we have all of these things coinciding to, just indicate like a new cycle of growth. So I'll stop there.
Fantastic. And we really would love if people have questions, especially now that you maybe know what we're talking about today. Just pop them over in the chat if you've got specifics. So questions about the midwife's bag. And, we can anticipate what some of those might be, but it's fun to hear what you're specifically interested in so that we can speak to the people who took time out of their day to show up live, because we do appreciate you bringing yourself and your energy to our circle here. So if I see people typing, because I'm on gallery view, which I would recommend for everyone. I think it's really fun to see what everyone's doing. So I'm looking around to see if anybody's like clacking away on their side with question, but I don't see any at the moment. I just see people staring at us.
So I have a couple of podcasts actually already on the birth bag, so maybe I'll dig those up and post them. I can't even remember what they're about exactly, other than the obvious.
Yeah, so how about I dig out your podcast, and I'll dig up a link I have where I went through mine a couple years ago, which maybe would be kind of fun. It's like a video. Oh yeah, because it might be different actually than now too.
Yeah, and I think I have at least two, but I'll find them if you don't. So
I'll go searching if you want to start. We have a couple questions over here.
Yeah, and right, if you keep your video off because you need to, that's absolutely fine. If you're able to turn it on, that's great. It's always nice to see faces. So let's see here. Oh boy. Well, obviously, or maybe not obviously, there's a lot of variation in what each midwife brings to a birth. So for you out there that may not know that, that's the truth. And so there's no right or wrong. There's no bad or good. But some midwives bring, everything but the kitchen sink, and some have very little. And I think it's a fascinating study in either case. But to start with Nicole's question about herbal tinctures, I can give you, my response. And again, everybody's would be different, but I have a respect for the plants, as many of us probably do. I feel a connection with the plants, but I wouldn't consider myself an herbalist. Like I'm not like schooled in the ways of all the intricacies of herbs. And so I take them seriously in a sense. Like I don't have a million, and the ones I have, I try to understand. And I even made my first tincture this last year with some yarrow that was growing here on this property. And that felt really meaningful. And I haven't used it. And, I have it in my bag for potential bleeding. But I like the idea of feeling closer to those tools rather than, kind of having this disconnect and like throwing them all in a tincture. So to answer your question, I have 4 herbs I like for postpartum bleeding. If that should happen, which is very, very rare, and they are motherwort, cottonroot bark, angelica, and God, what is the other one? I'm totally blinking. What else, Margot? What would I have?
Bag?
Huh?
What else do you have in your bag?
Yeah, like I know I always put the 4 on the tray and I'm like, my brain is not working, but there's a 4th one. Maybe I'm not thinking of it. Nope, it's not shepherd's purse. I
Witch
don't.
hazel?
Witch
Huh?
hazel. Witch hazel.
Witch hazel. Yes, thank you. Witch hazel, angelica, cottonroot bark, and motherwort. And I feel like I understand those as much as I can in the ways that I do. And honestly, if I were to use them and the times I have used them, I have said a prayer before I use them. So again, I don't take it lightly, and I don't consider them to just like be at my service, unless, they're requested to do so. But again, I can't remember the last time I even used them. So that's good news. And I think that's sort of the theme for most of the things in the bag, to be honest, is we don't really use them, rarely. And that's a good thing.
For sure. I was trying to find these other links, so I was like sort of semi-distracted there for a moment. I did put 2 of your podcast links here in the chat for people.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I can think recently though of, I take it back in a way, it wasn't for bleeding, but relaxing herbs that we utilized on a mama that was like really, really tired and still had a long ways to go in labor. And those were just a blend of, I don't even know what, honestly, probably like passion flower and chamomile and vervain and that kind of stuff, to just help her get some rest. So again, appreciative of those, but that's about it for me. I don't have too many other herbs that I use. And yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of, I mean, I would say I'm a minimalist, and it'll be fun for Margot and I to, each give you our spiel, because everyone's different. Although I know there are midwives that probably carry a lot less than I do, but in my mind, it's very minimalist, because I also think I could go without it, to be honest. Like if I left this suitcase that I have somewhere, I really wouldn't fret. I don't feel like I'm dead without it, which is a nice feeling. And that's one of the podcasts I have there, just kind of like ending our dependence on tools, I think is a good thing. They're useful when they are, but if you can't be at a birth without them, I think that's a whole other matter. Perhaps, maybe.
Perhaps, maybe. Somebody had their hand raised, and I don't know if it was an accident or if they wish to unmute and ask a question. Kayla?
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi. So I've just started out on this journey. I'm in South Africa. I'm gonna unenroll from uni because I've lost interest in a sense. So big choice decisions and that whole spiel. I guess my question is just like, I saw an email come through today about the certification and the, yeah, what's the word? Like, you know what I'm talking about?
Licensure?
Yeah, there we go. That's the word. So I just have I don't really understand about that. Yeah. Yeah.
So we had, I think, was it 2 circles ago, Maren, or 3? In any case, on our YouTube channel, we have all of our old past Zoom circles, and one of them was called Why Midwifery Licensing Sucks, I think was the title. And we have sort of endless content around this topic, actually. Like, our book is a really great place to start too, which is available either through Amazon or like pay what you can for ebook download. And I'll put that in the chat, indiebirth.org/book. And we have a whole course called The Beginner's Guide to Radical Midwifery, which is also pay what you can on our platform. And I'll put the link in the chat for that too. And it's funny, there's like so many South Africa synchronicities lately. And there's a few midwives there that we could connect you with who are very much in alignment with us. I don't think we've had any midwifery school students in South Africa, but we would love to do that, to have some people there, and we could continue the conversation. We also do free calls for people who are interested in pursuing midwifery and kind of want to like pick our brains and understand where we're coming from and our perspective and foundational stuff. And so I can post those links over in the chat too, but we have lots of resources, in other words, for people who are exploring this and are wondering like, what does this look like? And we're so glad you're here.
That's beautiful. Thank you. I'd love it if you could put me in touch with someone that's here in South Africa so I could go see them.
Yeah, I'll put my email too. That's the best way probably, is to just shoot me an email after this and be like, hey, remember me? I'm Kayla, and remind me what we talked about, and I'll get you hooked up.
I'll do that.
Cool. And I'll post those other links over here as well. And I think that is part of the conversation too, right? Like with birth bags, we talk a lot about licensing, so we don't have to get into all that right this second, but a lot of midwives feel like they have to carry specific tools and have specific things in their birth bag in order to be sort of like legitimate, which I think is another really beautiful sort of just deconstruction that we're offering, which is, a mainstay or a staple of the Indie Birth like motto catalog, at least, is that all tools can be used in a sacred way. So we're not here to say like this tool is bad or that tool is good. We're here to say we should just use them all really intentionally and understand their purpose and when they are maybe appropriate and when they aren't. And so not using things routinely. Someone mentioned over in the chat that they see a lot of Pitocin being used in the 3rd stage after the baby has been born. And that's a very common experience for people who are in apprenticeships in really anywhere in the world at this point. Pitocin has become really sort of like almost a universal tool that's used at births. And so do I have some in my bag? I sure do. But the last time I used it was a very long time ago. And it was with somebody who actually wanted, the only person I've ever worked with who wanted active management. She wanted, not true active management. She wanted Pitocin after the baby was born. She had hemorrhaged with her first birth in the hospital, and she just felt like that's what she needed in order to make the leap to home birth. And then with her 3rd baby, she did not want it. And it was a very special birth and really cool in all the ways she reclaimed it and said no to some of those other tools that she had said yes to previously. So that's getting into the like, what do women want at their birth? And like, there's this I think suturing is a really good example. Like I don't carry suturing material. So if somebody wanted that, I don't have that. So there's this piece too then of like, what does a midwife carry and how does that match up with people that are prospective clients? So maybe I'm going way off the rails now because I had some decaf coffee and I'm a little hyped up. Sorry, Maren, bring me back.
It's relevant. It's definitely relevant. And to that, I would just say transparency is key. So I'm totally open to answering questions. I mean, from anyone that's interested, really, but like potential clients as to what is in the bag for those reasons described. And that's all outlined in a document so that no one is surprised about what I have or what I don't have. Something like oxygen, I don't know that we quite want to get into that. I feel like we have other calls on that, but people that are I hesitate to say uneducated, but to a certain degree uneducated about the hazards of oxygen might think that that's a really great idea. And that's something that, why wouldn't you have at a home birth? Makes perfect sense to a lot of people. No, it actually doesn't. And so that's not something I'd want to hide from someone if that felt really important to them. Although most people I meet are really wanting to learn and are willing to change their perspective. So I'm not looking to convince anybody, as to what sort of home birth they should have. But on the midwife side, again, being really honest about what you do have, what you don't have, and why. And I think there's a lot of great ways of communicating that, right? It's like through our intention. It's not haphazard. So everything that I do have, I feel like has a purpose to a certain extent, right? Even if it's some extenuating circumstance. So there's not a lot of like unnecessary baggage, so to speak.
Baggage.
Literally and figuratively baggage. Yes.
Well, and I think like you were sort of alluding to earlier, like you use your one suitcase, and I definitely do have more baggage as a midwife. I bring along 3-ish bags plus my camera bag. But partially because I like to have the things in different bags for different circumstances. So it's like I could maybe fit it all into one suitcase, like a big suitcase, but I sort of like having it separate. But that's a personal preference. And I definitely, I have like weird, I was just getting these out when we were talking about herbs. Like I have all these weird unopened wish garden herbs because they came with a set that I had gotten for birth stuff. Like they literally haven't had the seals removed from them because I've never used them. But like I have them along kind of in just like a someday when I'm really desperate or something, labor enhancer. I don't know. Like maybe there's a circumstance in which I will feel like someone's labor needs to be enhanced. But as a standard thing, like no. And so like you're saying, Mary, like if I didn't have this in my bag, like who cares? But I definitely am someone who's kind of like a hoarder of tools. Like I kind of like to have like a squirrel. I've got all kinds of weird, like even like this is from I have like glycerin suppositories. I don't know if you have those in your bag. This is my like long labor, like we're getting desperate kind of pack. So it's like, okay, maybe somebody really needs to poop. So we've got that, I've got like CBD oil. I've got extra strength Tylenol. If people have heard about this trick, like the midwives, like kind of cocktail with Unisom that's probably like so expired. It expired in 2018. So a while ago, huh? Essential oils, that kind of stuff. So I definitely have like weird contingency kind of items that I think not all people do. And I've probably opened this bag like twice. But I thought I would get it out and show that too, in case it's funny.
Yeah, I'm trying to like think of the short list of things I actually use. And I don't know, it's kind of hard. I don't even know what I would say that like I absolutely had to have. So if you have an answer to that, go for it. But it's like, what would I absolutely have to have?
I mean, there's nothing you absolutely have to have, right? Like, and that's where it's like there's a spectrum. And I have in this bag also like my as I learned from you, I think this is what you had, right? Like a birth box.
Yeah, I have
If
a
I could only
similar-
have one thing in my birth bags, it would be this. These are like the things that are used most frequently. But even these things don't get used that frequently. Usually I leave a birth and I'm like, oh, I used some gloves and the cord bander. And that's pretty much, and the
Yeah.
babies.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we had a birth the other night and I'm like, I didn't use anything except a piece of cord string and a scissor. That's it.
Yeah.
Didn't need gloves, didn't need anything. So, those are great when that happens. I'm not saying that's always the way it is, but that was ideal. I got things out and they all went right back in.
Yeah. But I do have like a checklist. And I had taken it last year off of attending births, and I'm on call right now for the first one back. So I definitely did do like what should be in my bags, and like did the checklist to make sure everything was in there. And so I mean, I could pull that up if that would be interesting to people. I'll pull it up while we're chatting.
What other questions do people have? I think you might have more questions than we have things to say potentially about this, but I'll give it a minute.
I was looking at the birth supply box, and there was lubrication jelly and hydrogen peroxide. And I just was curious about, I mean, I was looking through the whole list, like, what would they use that for? What would this be for?
Do you want me to, yeah, do you want me to pull up this list and people can just ask, like, what the heck is that for? I'll share my screen.
Yeah, so in that case, right, like not only are there a lot of things a midwife might have in her bag, but then we have this whole other idea of birth kits for home birth. So many of you might be familiar with that. Maybe you're a midwife and you have your clients order that. Maybe you've had a baby at home and your midwife made you order that. That's like a whole bunch of ancillary things that may or may not be needed and not something I ask my clients to do, honestly. But the lube is probably just for vaginal exams. You can use other kinds of oils, honestly. So, a lot of these things have maybe substitutions that people just have at their house. So that would be an example of that. And peroxide, I mean, to clean blood out, but most people have peroxide, in their bathroom or under the sink. Or if you're in a non-rural place, I mean, a lot of these things, obviously, like you could just have someone go get. So
I actually have my very first person who I did have get a birth kit. I don't know if I told you this, Maren. It's a new development, partially because I was sick of trying to remember to like order that kind of stuff. And I also really hate when people get Chuck's pads that suck. As a personal preference. So that's the main reason. And so I've now I'll report back if it was a good choice to have them get this little kit. But it was really just Chuck's pads and hydrogen peroxide, again, to get blood out of things. And I think a couple packs of sterile gloves. But like I have my own, I'm bringing two. It's more just to like make sure, especially if I have more births this year, that I don't have to like reorder stuff. I don't have to remember to reorder so many things myself. So questions, here's my list. Not all of which I necessarily have. I think I made this when I first started out in 2017 on my own.
Somebody asked about the Yunnan bio. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a traditional Chinese recipe for staunching bleeding. And I have used it. it's a good creepy secret blend. So it's one of those things I feel a little conflicted about, but a lot of people carry it. And I don't know if it actually is that helpful or not, but it's a thing that I do have in my bag. So it's for postpartum hemorrhage.
And how do you apply it?
You can do it orally, and then if somebody had like a bad tear or something that you could actually access and see, you could also break open the capsules and sprinkle it on. That's, I think, more like the traditional use of it. Like the story that I have heard is that Chinese soldiers would take it with them when there was some sort of battle. And so if they had some terrible wound, they could address their own bleeding without needing too many other people to help them. I actually don't have IV supplies at the moment. I did for a while, and at this point, I just am too lazy to try to find the sourcing for them for how often I've wanted them, which was one time in 5 years. Are there other questions?
So so would yarrow be similar to the yen a bio yarrow? Would yarrow be applied similarly?
I mean, I don't really bring yarrow with me. It's not one that I use a ton, but it's usually in tincture form. So that would be orally.
Okay.
Were people still looking at that? I could put it back up. I just didn't know. Yeah, someone asked about powdered yarrow as a styptic. I've heard of that. It's just not something I carry. Peroxide in the pool. I missed all of these over here.
Yeah, perhaps we'll have a call on postpartum hemorrhage at some point, because I'm feeling like I have a lot to say about that, but it's not really the time for it. And I guess I could keep it to, herbs are great. However, if someone is bleeding, the most common reason is just because their uterus isn't contracting. So again, simplicity. Simplicity says that our hands are really useful. The cord, the placenta is really useful. So I think it's like one of the funny things about midwifery, where we start like going off into like this, like we embrace the alternatives, and that's great, but there's a time and a place when you're actually in an emergency situation. So we paint this pretty picture of like reaching for all these herbs, and while they may work, I don't know. I guess I'm saying that there are other things that are more effective in my mind. So that's me. It doesn't mean it has to be you, but you're not going to be like trying out all these things like Yunin Bio for the first time if someone's like bleeding out. Like you're just not. So not that you can't have it, but that's a call for another day.
Well, maybe not though, because like I think that's a really, really, really important point when we're talking about the midwife bag. And I'm so glad that you brought that aspect up, because yeah, it's like this very and I remember feeling this way as a student. It's like, oh my God, I'm going to be a midwife and I'm going to have all these like herbs in my bag, and I'm going to be just like this magical, weird witch that shows up and like fixes the problems with like these cool alternatives. When the reality is sometimes you have to like shove a catheter up somebody to get the pee out so that their uterus can contract, and like no herbs in the world are going to help you in that scenario. Like, yeah, so I don't know, there's like this romance around like the herbs and the plants because they are really cool, and like they all have this amazing, they all have their own little spirits, and it's all really cool, but at the same time, that's not the thing we should be relying on. And I feel like especially kind of like in the birth keeper world, it's like, oh well,
shepherd's purse, that's all you need.
Shepherd's purse and it'll be all fine. And it's like, no, you still need to understand the physiology, you need to understand yeah, all of the bits and pieces that go into it. So like you said, we could do a postpartum hemorrhage call sometime. We also have a whole course on that. I think if people do your manifesting an undisturbed third stage, which, do you want to find the link for that? I don't actually know what it is.
I don't know if I know what it is.
Because there's the bonus section of that. There's like a 4-part postpartum hemorrhage series for parents that we had made back when we did like more unassisted birth kind of stuff. So if that's something you want to like deep dive into, we have some cool resources on that. And we do talk about herbs and stuff, but again, it's more about like what's actually happening and what do we need to be understanding about the process in that scenario.
Yeah. And what prevention, I'm looking for this link, but I don't know that I'm going to find it. What prevention are we taking, and how are we working with these women during their pregnancies? So I know that seems unrelated for a lot of people, but it gets me fired up because it's like, there's no herb in the world that's going to stop a hemorrhage because this woman in front of you has unresolved trauma, perhaps. Like, that's not everybody. I'm just saying that there's a lot of nuance in any situation we find ourselves in at birth. And so, yeah, we can't just like throw tools at it. It's usually much more complex. And it might be even more simple than you think, to look at a woman that's bleeding and say to her, you need to stop it. Get a hold of yourself, your baby needs you, is sometimes more powerful than dropping herbs in her mouth, because it makes it a spoken real thing rather than like, I'm going to fix you. And I think there is that element of midwifery still where we take on too much responsibility in some ways and we're going to fix people. And yeah, I'm going to get ahead of myself there, but that's how I feel.
I just wanted to like make sure we covered some of these ones up higher too. Do you want to talk about like babies' vitals? Do many parents ask for them? What do you carry for that? It's a pretty simple answer.
Yeah, it's good timing actually. I think Sam's here. My student Sam is here. Maybe Angeli as well. I have 2 amazing, wonderful students. And today they got to walk through a newborn exam with the mom and check off their little list and do all their little things. And that was really fun to watch them do. And gosh, I mean, what do you need to do that? You need maybe a stethoscope and a watch, a tape measure, a scale, and that's about all. And that's, sort of a more thorough version where you're counting respirations and you're counting a heart rate and all of that. I don't find that parents are interested in that thing at all, in any of those things at all, when they have a healthy, beautiful baby in front of them. And so for us, even this newborn exam today was like 36 hours postpartum. It was not something we did immediately. I don't believe in that unless necessary. So the mom today was really cute and helpful and kind of wanted to hear the little spiel of normal newborn, but it's pretty uncomplicated, and you could probably do it without really any of those things, since most of it is observation. And there's a podcast on that too somewhere about newborn exams and how to assess a baby without necessarily even touching them. Yeah, they did so great. It was so fun to watch them do that. So yay. Someone asked about fetoscope, so that's easy enough. I have a couple. I have a shorter tubed one that I like to use, and I had an Allen fetoscope for years. They don't make them anymore, but I had mine for like the last 15 years or something. And that actually broke. And now Sam has gotten me another one. And so I need to like fit the earpieces on that. But that's been my favorite forever. Although I've adapted to like the cheap Amazon version of the long tubing one that Margot has there. And I don't know, those are probably less than $30 and they work fine. I don't use a Doppler hardly ever. I certainly don't use it routinely. I certainly don't use it prenatally unless someone is worried about something and they want to hear it. But most of my clients hear with the fetoscope and they have their own. So that's, 99% of what I use and what I have always used. And they work great.
I'll just blab for 1 second, just so for the recording and for on YouTube, people would be able to see what it looks like. So that's a fetoscope with the long tube. Like Marion said, you can get them on Amazon.
Can you show us how to use it? I just bought one and I had a really hard time finding a heartbeat.
It's a definite skill. We have a video from like 1,000 years ago when I was 15 years old. Just kidding. I look like I'm a baby. I'll try and find it on YouTube where Marin and I are showing you how to use it, where to find it. But honestly, you really just have to practice a lot. Seasoned midwives will make it look easy, especially if somebody's like, over 24, 28 weeks, like, oh, yep, I know exactly where to put it. There it is. Oh, can't everyone hear it? And often the parents even are like, what are you talking about? I hear nothing. But so it's a skill that you need to just hone and practice. But I'll post the YouTube link for that. And that reminded me, somebody asked how long both of us have been doing this, Marin, if you want to say while I search for that.
Let's see. I mean, the short version is I got involved in birth. Like my son is, how old is he? He'll be 19, I guess. So after his birth. So almost 19 years ago, I started an apprenticeship, and then I've been on my own as a midwife for almost 14 of those years.
And then I started attending births as a student midwife, as an apprentice with Marin in 2011, and have been here in Duluth doing my own thing as a midwife since 2017, 2016, I guess, technically. So, whatever that is, 6 years, which feels kind of crazy.
Yeah, time flies. That's for sure.
I posted
that
YouTube link, and it's very funny, and it's like the production quality is pretty funny, so you should definitely go watch it.
Dessa, seeing you reminds me of how long we've been doing this. Dessa and I met when we were like baby midwives at the very beginning of our apprenticeships together. So that's like making me teary. That was like so long ago, but I don't know. It's so fun to see your face and think we're still doing it. Who would have guessed? I remember thinking, I don't know if I'll do this for very long. This is intense. We'll see how it works out. And here we are.
Nicole way back had asked if, and you had spoken to this a little bit, Marin, but just to say a little bit more, the list of tools, like do you have it in the contract? Is it something you have them acknowledge? And I think you and I have it similarly in that it's in our like long explanation of services that they have to sign that they've read and understand.
Mm-hmm.
And they read even like before they come for a consult with me usually. I don't know that I'm going to talk a whole lot about where you get IV supplies and Cytotech, but they're out there in the world if you want them. And maybe we could talk more about it elsewhere, but they're not difficult to procure.
Yeah, and I'll just like repeat myself since I am allowed to do that. I really think that the more serious like tools and medications like are just not to be taken lightly. Like you all, if you're going to become a midwife, will figure that out and you'll have to draw your own line. That's what it is. It's a line that you have to draw, right? Because we don't do cesareans at home. We know that, but there are some midwives that get really close to major intervention. And again, whatever floats your boat. But as a student, I guess, don't think that that has to be normal. I don't really use drugs. Not to say I don't have them, but there's a lot of ways to learn more about all of these things. So don't automatically think you need to fill your bag with all the big and scary stuff to be a midwife. That's just not true. And there are midwives that carry a whole lot less than we do. There are midwives that go to births with a basket, and that works for them. So I think it's like a total myth of medicalized midwifery nowadays. And that's what a lot of the schools are teaching, that's how that's how you handle a hemorrhage, that Pitocin is the answer. And it gets me so angry and upset, actually, to think that that's what is being taught in the world. There's no creative thinking in that. There's no critical thinking in that. There's no anything in that. Like, you just pump someone full of drugs. How is this different than the medical model? If you need to, because you're somewhere, God knows where, and someone's bleeding, okay. But just as routine, and half of these new midwives don't even know what a hemorrhage is. They see a little bit of blood and they're shooting someone up with Pitocin. So that's my rant for the day.
And not to like swing wildly to the other side of the pendulum, but I saw this comment on here that said, I won't be carrying Pitocin, but have experienced some fear mongering around that. Sorry, I thought it was lingering. Well, I'm going to pretend that it's the first way that you put it. So if there's somebody out there who's like, well, I'm scared to not carry it, then I'm like, then carry it. Like, there's this kind of like both, you know what I mean? Like, we've turned them into these like,
yeah,
godlike things. And it's like, it's just weird horse hormone. It's not like, like there are risks to using it. There are times it might be useful. Like, it's just like another tool, but we turn it into this like, same with Cytotec, same with the IV stuff. It's like the boogeyman or something. And it's like, if the idiots who work at the hospital know how to use this stuff when it's needed, like, we can also know how to use it if you really want to. And for me, it's more about like being prepared in the event of like grid crash. That's why I really had like the IV stuff around. And I think I'm mostly out of it, but the only times that I used my IV equipment in the last 6-7 years, whatever it is, was one really long labor, one 5-day long labor, where I do think it made a difference and helped her kind of like push through to the end and have her home birth. And then once for my assistant / apprentice who was hungover after being on a boat on 4th of July. And then one time for my friend who had COVID and didn't want to go to the hospital and was like super dehydrated. So those are the 3 times I've used my IV equipment in the last many, many years, if that puts it into perspective at all. Because if somebody needs that, we also have, at least most of us, not everyone on this call though, because I know there's some people in low resource settings on here, but in people who have access, to a hospital 15 minutes down the road and EMS within 10 or 15 minutes, like, they're going to come with IV equipment and be more skilled at placing one if somebody really needs it, especially if they're actually bleeding and, their veins are getting hard to poke. So. Oh, wow, there's a lot of questions over here. Oh, good. People are handling it and answering them for us. Thank you, everyone who's helping us. Do we want to talk about Dopplers for the last 11 minutes of this call?
I'm curious about alternatives to dehydration other than IV. What would you guys do?
Yeah, we were just talking about this at this birth, maybe. I mean, not for any reason to do with the birth. We were just talking separately, but I was saying how rectal fluids have totally like saved my own children from, dehydration during a really bad stomach flu. So that's totally an option, even in a birth setting, and doesn't require needles and is way easier than that anyways. So yes, rectal fluids, look that one up.
Well, and I think if you looked at the list that I had pulled up, I had stuff on there for giving rectal fluids, which you can also use IV equipment to do. It's just like a neat little way to do it with the tubing. But you can also, we talk about this in the Indie Birth Midwifery School, there's other super low tech ways of doing that too. And I always carry a couple fleet enemas for super easy rectal rehydration if somebody needed it. Although I don't think we should recount the story of the one time.
No, I knew you were going to say that. That is not for today. No, it's not.
Sometimes it doesn't go as smoothly as you might think. I guess I'll just put that out there. They have to keep it in.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, we can talk about Dopplers, I guess, for the last few minutes if that's where people want to go. I don't know where to start with that in the time we have. What do you think, Margot? What's your Doppler spiel?
I guess I could give the Doppler spiel. I also just am sitting here looking at my birth bag and just wanted to also mention a couple other things first, maybe. I actually really do like the Resusci cradle, if people have seen that. It's like a special like positioning device to help when a baby needs resuscitation, like major resuscitation, as opposed to just like a couple inflation breaths that the mom can do on their own and in their arms. So that's something, if people want to check that out, I think that's worth having. I actually, it's a long story, but I don't have one in my bag right now. I also have a anti-shock garment. Do you still carry one of those around, Maren, or did that get like?
I mean, I never carried it around because it's like ridiculous, but it's in my office.
I just have mine in my trunk of my car because it also could be helpful if you happened upon like a terrible car accident or something. Who knows?
I know. We're the opposite that way. I can't think of every scenario and you think of every scenario. So we're the perfect match.
Yeah, it's totally perfect. I do have an anti-shock garment. And also I have maybe two people this year who are due like 2.5 hours north of here. And they have a hospital there, but they don't do births. And even if we went with a hemorrhage, like it would be a flying on a helicopter to my city kind of situation. So in the boonies for real. And I feel better. Like it makes me feel less stressed out about going to a birth, knowing like I could throw one of those on somebody and possibly, at least I don't think it's a life or death kind of thing, although in some scenarios it could be like really low resource settings. But I think it definitely could help somebody just not be as bad in as bad of shape if we really had to like wait for a helicopter and do crazy stuff. So those are two things. There was maybe a third thing. Maybe it'll come back to me. I really like having catheters with me. I know I already brought them up once, so that might be weird to bring up twice in a conversation, but I think they can be super, super useful. And it's usually one of those skills when we do a midwifery skills workshop that people are like, oh, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to ever have to do this. And there's a very lovely midwife. I don't see her on right now, who I've been doing some like collaboration with. She's a newer midwife. And I think twice in the last year, she's called being like, I've got to do a catheter and I can't find the pee hole. And I've had to be like, remember when you did it at the skills workshop, like you can do it. And so it's been helpful in multiple situations. What else was I going to say? I think that's it. Just wanted to put those couple things out there too as things I like to have along. But again, we could make do without. It's just some things make me feel like I can sleep a little better at night.
Yeah, I hear you on the catheters. I mean, as crazy as that might seem, it definitely can be helpful. Although I can't really think of a time for me, maybe once or twice, where it like really helped and like changed the trajectory of the birth, if that makes sense. I feel like the majority of the times it was sort of like a last ditch effort and the birth sort of didn't happen in the ways we thought after that anyways. So I wonder sometimes if, like that's just a symptom of something bigger going on. Cause like really you should be able to pee during labor unless something totally bizarre happens. But it is a good skill to have, and it would suck to, have someone go in just for that.
Well, now we only have 5 minutes. And someone said Dopplers, schmopplers, which I think is funny. And we should probably talk about that.
I don't know. I feel like maybe one day I'll do a podcast on Dopplers and where I'm at with the whole thing at the moment. I think the long and short of it is what we've already shared, which is every tool has its medicine. And I mean that in the highest sense. Like everything, even the pharmaceuticals have their place, and they have, they have the perfect use. So a Doppler is definitely one of those things. But if I'm going to keep it general, I think they're way overused. I think many midwives never learn to use a fetoscope. Many midwives are using a Doppler all through people's pregnancies. I've met countless students that have never even seen a fetoscope. That blows my mind. And I'm so grateful that I learned to use a fetoscope early on. A Doppler just feels really rare for me and still sort of out there. And yes, it might have a place in a birth for sure. But, the larger topic of what it's actually telling us is huge. It's not a matter of, if it is a matter of, is this baby alive? Okay, yes, then confirm that with a Doppler. But unfortunately, it's a way bigger topic. And I don't think anyone quite understands it, to be honest. So you have to really be clear with yourself and figure out how and when and where you would use that and what it means to you. And so I'm juxtaposing that to like a lot of the licensing rules and regs that say plop a Doppler on there every 15 minutes. Why? And is that improving outcomes? Is that improving births? Are we taking mothers away from their wisdom and their connection to their baby? Yes, I think all of those things are true. And so, using our discretion and having intention with it is where I would like to direct that conversation, probably at a later date.
Yeah. And, in our Indie Birth Midwifery School program, we definitely have classes on this. And I made I think an 1.5-hour long class, on fetal heart tones. And it's actually based on a presentation that I did way back when at one of our in-person retreats, which was really fun to do. And it was really fun. Gail Hart actually came to my session and we got to have a conversation about it, which was oh my God, fangirling with her at my thing. But yeah, and I don't know, I had this moment just now where I was maybe we should do a special where we make that public or something for a week or two, so people who wanted to listen to it could check it out, because the research is so fascinating. There's definitely the emotional and spiritual components, and then there's the black and white piece, which is we actually don't know if it helps
Right.
at all. We've never done this. We know that intermittent monitoring with the Doppler is better than doing continuous monitoring with a continuous monitor in a whatever we want to call it, a low risk birth, whatever. And there's some argument and research that shows it's actually better in high risk births too, but there's never been a study done to see if intermittent monitoring, so that every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes, depending on what protocols you're looking at, if that intermittent monitoring improves outcomes over zero monitoring. And there's never been any research that shows or looks at what the optimal timing would be, even if we do intermittent monitoring in labor. So those 15 and 30 minute protocols are just pulled out of someone's ass. They're just made up. So we actually don't have any data to support what we're doing. But there's no way that the medical system is ever going to do that study. So, if we're looking purely at the evidence base, there's not an evidence base for doing intermittent monitoring. And I was saying to Marin the other day when we were walking, talking, it'd be so cool to do kind of a round table with midwives and to talk about the time, if there have been any times in their careers where they felt the information that they got from listening with a Doppler changed the outcome or trajectory of the birth and the way that they handled it. If it changed decision making moving forward in the birth process. And I have a whole story of my own that I'm not going to share right now. I've shared it other places, but just that, I had an experience where listening with the Doppler did not change the outcome, a poor outcome. And since then, I've definitely felt a lot more hesitant to use the Doppler and to use the information that we get from the Doppler, because it's really subjective and we don't actually have a great way of interpreting it. Last thing I'll say, usually what I share with parents is there's a study. I'll see if I can find it. I bet I can't in the time that we're on here together. But there was a study done where they showed the same obstetricians, plural, the same strip. So the same fetal monitoring strip, if people are familiar with that, the little printout that comes out when you're at the hospital, right, with the tracing of the fetal heart rate and the contractions. They showed them the same set of information, the same strips on different occasions, and a significant portion of the time they interpreted it differently. So one day they would look at it and say, this baby's totally fine. Another day they might look at it and say, ooh, I'm not sure, I'm worried about this baby. So it's super subjective, even within the same practitioner's brain on different occasions. So a lot of people think it's like this gold standard, that it's the best thing, that you've got to do it, that it's like you can't question this like idea of listening to a baby. But it's actually really, really shaky and shoddy. It's not a great tool, and there's not a lot of like hard black and white information other than like what Marin said, which is like, is this baby alive? Are they not alive?
Right. Yeah. And again, topic for another day along those lines would just be like, why is the focus on the technology? That's my question. I mean, and with the women I serve, we talk a lot about connection with the baby and feeling movement the whole pregnancy, and it's no different in labor. So if you have a woman that doesn't have that skill and she's disconnected, yeah, I guess you had better listen. But if you have a woman that has the baby in her body and she's connected, she's going to tell you what she feels. And that's more reassuring than anything I could ever hear from a piece of plastic. So I'm grateful to women that, feel that way, because I feel like it makes my job easier to have that trust with them, and to tune in different energetic ways to the baby. So, again, it's a tool. Tools are fine. But where did it come from? And the answer is it came from the medical model that doesn't talk about these other things, doesn't talk about a mother being connected to her baby or anybody being connected to anybody. So we just can't have one of the conversations. And I think that's for the best, because to rely on a piece of plastic is also really crazy. I think it's really crazy to do that and to think it means something. So that will be a podcast maybe at some point, but right now we are done, I believe. Yeah, so just closing remarks. We have our Indie Birth Midwifery School as per usual. We have been running this school for, 6 or 7 years now at this point. It's a really awesome school. We have lots of our students here and all around the world. So you can check that out if you're interested and see if it's for you. If you are a doula, we also have a doula program, and lots of material there, lots of fun student testimonials on our YouTube channel for that. And finally, if you're not a member of our free social network, Margot will post that, get on there because it's free. You can hang out with all of these kind of people that you see here today. There, you can post your own questions. You can figure out who lives near you and, kind of be in tune with whatever else we're working on. So lots of free podcasts, many 10 years of podcasts are out there between us both. There's tons of free content. Anything you heard today that you feel interested in, I can promise you there's a podcast about it. And if nothing else, we will see you back here in 2 weeks. So this is every 2 weeks. The Zoom link is usually on YouTube, Instagram and our social, but then you can watch on YouTube. I'm sure there are people over there watching right now.
Cool.
Thank you. That was great. Thanks, guys.
You're welcome.
All right,
Thanks very
everybody.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Oh.
everyone. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.